What is going on, everybody? I'm Aslan Hajivandi, joined by the brain trust of the Warchant.com family, Ira Schoffel, our managing editor, and Corey Clark, senior/lead writer. Subscribe to Warchant.com. It is the ultimate Seminoles sports source. After all, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. That's free of charge. Lower right corner of your screen. Also, hit that thumbs up. Gentlemen, we are here to preview the spring football season, which starts in about 30 days, beginning of March. And one of the biggest things that's been going on with Florida State rebuilding this roster is obviously what they've done at wide receiver. Ira, I'll begin with you. So we gather here to talk about what they've done this offseason in the transfer portal. So has Florida State ultimately made what you would maybe deem as the right moves in the transfer portal at the wide receiver position?
Well, I think that obviously they're casting a wide net, to go out and get 4 transfer wide receivers. That's more than I expected. I thought they might go out and get 2, possibly 3, but to go out and get 4, I think, it shows the commitment. I think the question is, did they hit on enough of them, and how many did they need to hit on? I think it's easy to say that, for example, Deuce Spann, the former quarterback who signed at Illinois, he's coming in. He's only caught like 5 passes as a college football wide receiver. So that's, kind of a wild card. But I think of the other 3, you really look at specifically the top 2, Winston Wright out of West Virginia, and then Micah Pittman out of Oregon, are 2 guys who I feel like Winston Wright certainly is an every down receiver at the college level, at the Power 5 level. And I think Micah Pittman could be as well. And then if Johnny Wilson turns out to be the same, now you've done really well. Again, I think you don't need all 4 of those guys to be hits, but you need at least 2 of them to be.
At least not in year 1, right? Like at least not
right.
in 2022. If they got a couple, that's a good way to look at it, Ira. You always do bring good insight and sort of perspective. Corey, what about you, man?
Now it's my turn. Now it's my turn to not bring the good insight.
Well, you got an hour a day you do it usually on. What do you think about wide receiver? Ira's just been one of the guys that's kind of been ahead of this, talking about how important it was. So do you think this was the biggest position of need, and how do you think they ultimately targeted in terms of the transfer portal?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say that wide receiver was the biggest position of need. They have been so pedestrian there for years. Not a place like Florida State, man, to not have anybody that's really a difference maker, an impact player, is really noticeable and hurts the program. And I think, you're not expecting all 4 of these guys to be that. But like Ira said, if 2 of them hit, and then all of a sudden now you went from having legitimately maybe the most unproductive wide receiver unit in ACC play in the Power 5. I don't know. It wasn't good at all. And now you have guys, especially the kid from West Virginia, who has played at this level and played really well. He's produced at this level. Your wide receiver position has gone from bad/subpar to, you would think, at least above average, right? Right, Ira? At least average, maybe even above average, maybe great. We don't know what these guys can do now that they're actually going to get an opportunity.
Yeah, especially if a guy like Malik McClain takes the next step. He was a guy that kind of was thrust unfairly into being a leading role. I mean, he started almost the whole season at wide receiver as a true freshman. That's a lot to ask. A lot of true freshmen have not had a lot of success at that position. So, if you think he takes the next step to go with those newcomers, along with Pokey Wilson and Keyshawn Helton and some of these guys who have been around a long time. Again, now you don't need those guys to be the focal point. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, I think Pokey Wilson can be a nice wide receiver. He doesn't need to be the guy running the fly patterns. He doesn't need to be the guy you're counting on to make the big plays. But as a complementary guy, he and Keyshawn and some of those other guys, might be more productive because they're not going up against the other team's number 1 or number 2 corners.
And don't you think that the Wilson kid, I know we talked about Deuce from Illinois, but the Wilson kid might be literally and figuratively the biggest wild card, because, to make your bones as a wide receiver, man, there's a lot of people that can get yards from the 20 to the 20, but you got to score touchdowns. You got to get in the end zone where the windows are tighter. Jordan Travis has not really had a lot of big bodied targets to throw to since he hasn't had any really since he came to Florida State. McClain's the closest one. This kid could be an impact player if he's the kind of guy that can go up and catch 50-50 balls in the end zone, right?
And what do you got? I mean, like the wild card to this is the other wild card. It's all wild cards. Stealing wild cards.
Yeah.
Is, are we giving up on some of the other guys? Are we ready to move on from the Kentron Portiers and Jordan Youngs and the guys that have, and Kentron's only been here a couple of years. I guess it's not fair to say that with him. But some of these other wide receivers who haven't produced yet, is this a year, do you think, that they can step into complementary roles, or do they need to focus on the big 4 or 5, whatever that ends up being?
Definitely a storyline to keep on as we go into spring football here. We did ask you folks, given these new transfers, how you describe the confidence level in the wide receiver room for 2022. This was posted on the Tribal Council over at warchant.com. On the extremes there, whether you're extremely confident or extremely cynical, you're kind of in no man's land. But on the higher end of spectrum, a lot of people obviously seem to be looking at this in a glass half full perspective. Over 70% of the respondents say that they're hopeful and excited, but they'll need to see some evidence of it still in the spring. I guess to your point, Ira, I think if you can get these guys, if a Micah Pittman, Winston Wright can be an every down receiver for you, like let maybe Kentron Portier come on, maybe at a slower pace. I mean, he was a 3-star wide receiver, seemed to be a bit of a project, so I don't want to throw the towel on him yet. But if those guys can respond early in 2022, maybe gets the young guys some time to get their feet underneath them. I'll ask you this, though.
But I was going to say real quick, Aslan, we talk about competition in practice all the time, like from an offense versus defense standpoint, and iron sharpening iron. We all understand that. That's a phrase that's been coined, and it's a great phrase. But man, it really helps just with the competition at that position. Like, look, man, there are players now there's no guarantee that Keyshawn Helton plays a lot of snaps. He's got to go earn them now because there are guys coming for his job that are capable of taking his job. Same thing with Pokey, same thing with Malik McLean, Portier, Williamson. All those guys have to raise their game up or they might not see the field. Last year, it didn't matter. They were going to see the field no matter what because that was all they had. But now there's actual real other Division I wide receivers, some of them are really proven, that will make that even just getting on the field harder, which should help everything.
Ira, let me ask you this. Unless you wanted to rebut on that one, by all means.
No, I'm good.
But just looking at Florida State's offense last season, they were the 94th ranked passing offense, which is obviously not where they want to be with an offensive-minded head coach who's now going to be calling the plays. If we're sitting here in a year and we do see improvement from Florida State's offense, which I think we're all kind of bracing for because, again, it's kind of a low bar to clear. I mean, do you think an improved Florida State offense will result because of these transfers, or will it be the elevated play from Jordan Travis? And I know they kind of go hand in hand, but do you think is the easiest way for improvement some of these guys to actually hit and perform at the wide receiver position, or will it be kind of incumbent on Jordan Travis to kind of find a different gear that maybe we didn't see consistently from him?
I think the offensive line and the wide receiver improvements, I think are going to help Jordan Travis more than the other way around. I mean, there are certain quarterbacks that are elite that can come into a program and they're so accurate and they make decisions so quickly. They have such good, strong arms that they can make the receivers better and their offensive line even look better. I don't know that Jordan Travis is that kind of guy. He's got other skills. He's got other things he can do that really open up the running game. But I think he's a guy that's going to need wide receivers who can get some separation, some offensive linemen who can provide protection. If you look back at last season, I really think it's hard to judge Jordan as a passer sometimes because in certain games, Clemson, NC State, Florida, where they just got overwhelmed up front, you either need to have a quarterback who's amazing or wide receivers who are amazing, and they didn't have either one, along with not great pass protection. So to me, I think Jordan continues to get better, but I think what's going to allow him to look a lot better is if these receivers really step up. And these new offensive linemen that we'll talk about as well in upcoming episodes, if they step up as well.
Corey, chicken or egg, is it going to be the quarterback that's going to make these receivers look better, or is it going to be the receivers that are going to make the quarterback look better?
Yeah, man, I think it'll be the receivers. I just, like Ira said, it's a very rare few that can go into a program and all of a sudden, Kenny Shaw turns into Kenny Shaw. After being kind of an average receiver for 3 years, all of a sudden he's a 1,000-yard receiver. It's not like he was coached better. That had everything to do with the guy throwing passes. Jordan Travis isn't that. But these guys are good enough that, again, you don't have to just throw to guys that are open, because if that happens, there's a lot of times last year there was nowhere to throw the ball. With these guys, especially I think Winston Wright is a really good route runner and has done it at this level. He's going to give you that fit. He's going to be like the big tight end that teams have, that Mahomes has with Kelsey, like the guy that you can count on. Winston Wright obviously isn't that body type. He's not a tight end. But coming out of the slot on 3rd and 6, he's a guy that you can count on to probably get open.
I like to probably
find that hole.
I like to call it a safety blanket.
A safety blanket. Okay. Yeah. All right. A safety blanket? Is that what they're called?
Security blanket.
Security blanket, I think is what
valve.
Safety valve. Yeah. I like my security valves.
Security wild card.
Security valve.
But,
so you have him, but you also have again, I go back to Wilson, a guy like that if he's just running with a guy, he's not past him, but he's running stride for stride with him, you can toss it up to him and he might get you a 40-yard touchdown. When have they had that? When have they had a guy that could go high point? And I'm not saying we know that he can. We'll know a lot more in the spring. But if he can go make 50-50 catches, and instead of them being 10-90 propositions, they're legitimately 50-50 propositions or 80-20 in the good way, that is such another security valve for a quarterback to have.
I think the one thing I would say is, and I think we got to give them credit. Part of the reason we're giving them credit for what they did do in the portal at the wide receiver position this year, it does make you third guess or fourth guess or first guess. Last year, really kind of riding so much with Andrew Parchment. I don't know what else was out there. I don't know who else they could have gotten a wide receiver, but they also signed some other transfers at other positions that maybe knowing what you knew about that wide receiver position, maybe you go after another wide receiver because Parchment was you didn't know what you were going to get from him anyway. Right. Especially not being in here for the spring. So I do like the fact that they're throwing these numbers at it. One other guy that we didn't mention, another wild card, the 10th wild. Mike Norvell's got a deck with just wild cards.
Nothing but wild cards.
Is Joshua Burrell, because he's a guy that showed some promise last spring as an early enrollee when he came in with Malik McClain, but then got hurt in preseason camp and was on a scooter the whole season. This will be an interesting spring for him just to see. I'm not saying he has to be a key guy, but we liked his physicality, the size he has, and he might be a guy that maybe can work his way in there as well.
And on that topic real quick, guys like Portier and Williamson, like we might have maybe given up on them or said, okay, they're just not going to make it at this level after 2 years, which is not the right thing to do, but people do that. It's life. It's how fandom works. But just keep in mind that I did it anyway. I did the same thing about Kalen DeLoach. I was like, this guy's never going to be an impact defensive football player at Florida State. And then he ended up coming seemingly out of nowhere to lead them in tackles. So these guys' careers aren't over yet either. And now they're getting pushed by better players, which should only make them better. And we'll definitely know at the end of this year whether they're legitimate Florida State receivers or not.
A palatable deep dive of this wide receiver rundown is available in a story form over on warchant.com for our subscribers. So head over to the website, use the promo code WARCHANT30 if you're not a member to get ready for the spring football season. Again, we think we're probably about 30 days or less than 30 days away from that. We'll continue to do a series of these previews with not only the three gentlemen on your screen, but as well as with Tom Lang, Jeff Cameron, and our own Gene Williams, our founder administrator. So do stay connected with us. Football season is so close. It's there. It's nearly there. We can feel it. Ira, Corey, thanks for your opinions and your knowledge. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Aslan.